Hello and welcome to the Passion Driven Pioneers interview series. I'm your host, John Channon, and today I'm joined by Jason Paris, who is the founder of Paris Painting. Jason, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so would you like to kick us off with a little bit of a brief background as who you are, what you do, and the business that you're in?
Sure. So my name is Jason Paris. I started a house painting company called Paris Painting in the Twin Cities. So we're the largest house painting company by a pretty wide margin. We don't do a ton of commercial painting. It's mostly residential. That's our real bread and butter. Um, there's not a ton that I do day to day in the business anymore. The org chart has mostly been built out, operate more from the board level, still where the founders at, things like that. Most of my time, energy, and effort is into a holdings company that I founded with a couple of partners called Aleph Holdings. And so that holdings company has a couple of businesses in it. There's about 14 in it right now, a little bit of a real estate portfolio. Um, and Paris Painting would be one of those painting companies that are in the portfolio there.
That's cool. So you mentioned you started this up a little while ago. What inspired you to start this business? Or what was that initial spark maybe that got
Well,
you going in this business?
I wish I could tell you a great story about how analytical and thoughtful I was. And I looked at the trades landscape and saw that there was an opportunity, professionalism that just wasn't there. And I knew that if I brought some industry, professionalism, that I could just crush it. But what really happened is I painted my way through college and graduated from the University of Minnesota with an econ degree, and then worked in Fortune 500 land for about 13 months. But once I'd gotten that itch of entrepreneurism, you can't cure that. So I ended up starting my own painting company, largely because it's the one thing I learned how to do in college that I could actually start a business with.
Well, you said you got that itch for entrepreneurism. You got it pretty quick, right? If
Yeah,
you
and I would probably I'm a good case study of someone that I think most people who knew me in high school or even middle school, my teachers would never guess that I'd be an entrepreneur or someone that would run their own company. Pretty quiet, pretty shy, um, but very motivated, very determined. And now that I've had a few reps in the startup world, there's nothing I'd rather do. I'm definitely a startup guy.
so you mentioned you went to college, right? Econ major, worked in the industry for just a short period of time, and then you started up your own business. Did you have any, misconceptions as you were kind of diving into starting up your own business that you'd like to share with the audience?
Um, I knew it was going to be hard. I knew I was going to be passion fueled. Um, I think the biggest kind of vision is, looking back 2020, hindsight is 2020, as they say, would be what it would take to achieve the long-term goals that I'd set out. So I wrote down on a piece of paper, I still have it, yellow legal pad of uh, the size revenue I thought I would have to get to have the option to become passive in the business. And that revenue mark was off by a factor of 4. So the business just had to become a lot larger and a lot more robust to achieve that goal. So you just don't know what you don't know. But I would encourage people to set a vision, set a path, and then do what kind of the art of wayfinding. You may not have an exact map or route on how to get there, but you know the general direction you want to get on. And then, as I learned, that direction can change quite a bit.
And that sounds kind of interesting, right? Setting that goal and then also realizing, wait a minute, I've got the goal, but I haven't quite got the business to where it needs to be to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah, it's
How long
more
did
more.
it take you
I'd
to
probably
realize
rephrase
that?
it. I was gonna say I'd probably rephrase it to say I had the direction, the compass right.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the route would be, and just being flexible to change the route as you go, but continue to head in the same direction.
And then how many years in business was it until you kind of were starting to feel comfortable with how large the business was and the fact that you could start to unwind yourself a little bit from the day-to-day stuff?
Yeah, so I started in 2012,
Hmm.
more as a side hobby, and then 2014 started going full time, and it was probably 2022 that it really became more of the fruit was ready to be harvested. I have a great team and great partners I worked with along the years, and um, but it took probably a good 8 years until I was able to say, this has been a fantastic ride. I'm proud of what I've built, and the next team is ready to take it and run with it.
So it sounds like, your work-life balance now is pretty good, Can you talk about what it was like at the beginning and what are some of the key things that you needed to do to get it to where it is today?
Yeah, so I always say I left my 9 to 5 to start a 5 to 9, and that's really what it was. It was 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. There was nights I would sleep at the office. My wife would take the kids up to her grandparents' cabin, and I'd be at the office all week. So you just, and that's not how it always has to be. That's how it was for me. That's what a gritty startup was. Um, but yeah, having an irrational passion of what you want to pursue. And when you start a company, you kind of have to be the visionary for yourself, right? And without a vision, people will cast off their restraint. And so you're forcing the discipline on your own. But that's what it takes. It takes an irrational passion of what you want to pursue to do a startup.
Irrational passion. I like that. So talk a little bit about, and we'll keep it focused on the painting business. How do you guys stay abreast of, changes in the industry
Yeah.
or new market trends and developments? What are you doing to kind of stay current and out there in front?
Yeah, I'm very involved in the industry at large. And so there's associations, that you can seek out. We have one, it's called the Painting Contractors Association. It's a 140-year-old organization. I was fortunate enough to serve on the board. I still serve on the board. I was able to serve as chair from 2020 to 2022. Now serve as the immediate past chair for that association. And that's a great way to get networked and plugged into, a lot of painting contractors all over the place that are more focused on business and can talk to you about issues that you're dealing with. And that's something that's a little novel to the trades. The trades aren't a very professionalized industry. It's a very cowboyish type world for now, at least. And so to find other business owners that are more business savvy, more business minded, and less about chugging the Red Bull and living for the weekends and puffing their chest and kind of a little standoffish is most of what the trades are. But if you can find people that are open-minded, business-minded, growth-minded, blue ocean type people, that's what you can learn a lot from.
Yeah, that's good. I know the paint industry is pretty well structured given my years in the specialty chemicals industry and supplying acrylic polymers. So
Sure, sure.
cool. Let's talk a little bit about future plans and goals. Could you just offer us maybe a little glimpse into the future plans and goals that you have for your business?
Yeah. So Paris Painting will continue to have moderate growth. It's not doing the crazy growth it was doing in its earlier years. It's parlayed a little bit into what's parlayed into a roofing company. So we have Paris Painting and Paris Roofing. Paris Roofing largely lives off of the value that's provided through Paris Painting's client list. So when hailstorms come through, there's a large client list that can be nurtured and can be harvested there. So that's kind of the vision and plan for Paris Painting. It's a nice, stable business. It's an 8-figure business. They'll continue to grow above inflation for the years to come. And that's kind of the story for Paris Painting.
That's really neat. So, so you mentioned kind of you moved into what you would consider a complementary market that you could leverage, your existing contact base with.
Yeah.
Any other markets like that you guys are thinking of in the future that you're willing to disclose, I should say?
Yeah. I mean, we're pretty focused. This is probably a novelty where we view roofing as almost like a different type of coating. It's like painting the roof of a house in a way. It's not too crazy. We had dabbled in full on remodeling. So we started a sister company. We were doing kitchen remodels and bathroom remodels. And, there's a lot of value to diversifying. There's also a lot of value to specializing. And I would say roofing is close enough to our painting infrastructure that there's a lot of crossover. We like that synergy. If we're going to put our efforts anywhere outside of Paris Painting, it's more in acquiring painting companies in different states.
So is it safe to say you guys are no longer doing the remodeling part of your business?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. That
Well,
was a nice little 2-year sprint that started in 2020 for perspective.
yeah, why don't you
That was
kind
a
of
fun year
walk
to
us
read.
through, the decision to get into it, and then a couple of years later, kind of what you were looking at and how that decision evolved to basically make another change.
Yeah, it was kind of a fruition of our handyman division. So when we paint houses, there's almost always some wood repair that needs to be addressed, and we built up a little team that did that. And then a buddy of ours from college had a little construction company that we're looking to wrap into our painting company, and said, why don't we start a more of a remodel division that he was already doing stuff like that. Well, 2020 hit and remodeling got pretty exciting real quick. And there was the COVID boost of the Biden bucks and all those fun things, but the supply chain got very challenging. Working in people's homes got pretty challenging, and it became there was upside to it, but it was more of a distraction. You'd say the level of return we got for each input in was better served in our painting company than in the remodeling business. And that's a great testament to America. This is the land of the free, home of the brave, and it's the land of opportunity at the end of the day. There's a million ways to make $1 million, and it's good to pick one and focus on it. And that's what we've done.
Yeah, and I think also, the lesson is, learning when maybe you're into something that doesn't quite fit with the focus or isn't quite as complementary to
Right.
what you are really good at doing.
Right. And some of it could be circumstantial, but I think the team that we have here is really good at the professionalization, the scaling of simple trades businesses. That's what we found with the partners that we end up acquiring that are painting companies. And there's just a different skill set that's required in the remodeling space, especially as a startup, where it's a lot more cowboyish. And it just doesn't fit the skill sets of this team quite as well.
That's really good. I know you've used that term cowboyish a couple of times, so
Yeah.
that's
Wild West.
Wild West. So I'm going to ask you the magic wand question, right? So if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about your business, what would that be?
Man, I love the way it operates right now. I don't know what I would change. I'm pretty happy with where it's at right now, and maybe that's a bad thing, but the team is awesome. I'd say may wave the magic wand and cost of acquisition goes down. That's something we started seeing Q2 last year, where cost of acquisition started to go up, and we like growing, we continue to grow, but our cost on margin to do the marketing and sales is much different than it was from 2020 to 2022. Starting in 2023, got a little more expensive to grow market share than it had been previously. And that's, we kind of faced the whispers of a recession for the first time. Hasn't panned out that way. But even the whispers of a headwind made it a little bit difficult for us. So that's more of an environmental wave, maybe, or an environmental wave of the magic wand. I'm pretty pleasantly surprised at the internal operations that we have here as a team.
Well, you've done a lot of learning over the years, and as you said, the team seems
Would
to
not
be.
have said that 5 years ago. I
Yeah. Well,
had a long wish list.
so talk about the importance of having a good team, and how are you supplementing maybe some of your skill sets via your
Yeah.
team members?
Well, it depends on the type of business you want to run. And I'd say when you start up, you have to be a generalist. You have to be pretty much good at everything. And you're really building an extension of yourself. And that's what most small businesses are, is they're extensions of the founder. If you want to build something that's larger and more scalable and ultimately stable, you really want to build a team of specialists. And that was a pretty easy thing for me to do because I'm a startup guy. I'm a generalist. Easy for me to find specialists that are way better than me at one specific thing. But that's a preference thing. Everybody has to choose that. That's what I decided to choose. And for me, it was quite easy because I'm not that really great at one specific thing.
Well, knowing that this show, right, is targeted towards people who are in their first few years of starting up a business or thinking about getting a business up and going,
Yeah.
do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I think we talked about an irrational passion that you should have, and I just want to double down on that. It is hard to run a small company. End of the day, the buck stops with you. There's no complaining. You can complain about the government, about the environment, about your clients, about your employees or subcontractors or whatever it may be, but the buck stops with you. And if you're a complainer, go work for the government. That's right. But when you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be a startup person, it's going to be really painful. And I would say, be ready to cry every single year. And when I was building Paris Painting and building that company, I could point to every single year. There was a time where I just was emotionally, physically, spiritually, completely spent, and I would break down and cry. And I think that's a good thing. I think when you care that much about something, you pour that deeply into something. That's kind of the fruit of it, is you end up breaking down. But what do you do when you enter that crisis of meaning? You've got to have an irrational passion that's driving you.
I think that's really well stated. So, well, I want to thank you for your time today, Jason. It was great meeting you, learning more about your entrepreneurial journey. And to everyone watching, I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.